you guys just saw my setup in the bathroom here and getting things loaded, getting the negative loaded, blacking out the windows like those are. You know, flip the screen out here. Hey, I can see myself. Got a little lav on now, leaving the lights on. I tried to do an exposure or a little video with it in the dark, but it didn't work out very well. So I'm gonna do this with the lights on once. My setup is, you can see I've got they're actually labeled on this side, developer, stop bath, and fixer. You saw me mix those. I was actually running a little short on developer, so it's a little light, but I think it'll do the job. And I forgot my distilled water, so it's just regular water in the developer and the in the stop bath. The fixer's still, I mean, it's been mixed for months, so it's still fine. I don't know if you saw, I've got my timer clock up on the wall right above the toilet table, and that's my safe light that I had set up. Windows taped off. I taped off the window that's out here also, so it doesn't come in when the lights are turned off. I'm doing a 35mm slide today, or not slide, but 35mm film, which you saw me load. And there's just a lever over on this side of this thing that clamps everything in place. And then you can do some rotation. If you need to with these Besslers. This is I think an original 23C. They're up to the 23C3 now. So usually when doing 35s at smaller size, today I'm working at 5x7. So I've got this ruler actually set at 5.5 by 7.5 over here. And that gives me a 1/4 inch when I'm matting it that I can cover up with the mat board and give me some fudge room for framing it in, and that way you don't see the edge of the image, because I am not doing this with a black border on the image. Maybe I should, but I'm not going to. Anyway, so I guess let's go through this thing. So film's already loaded. I've got this guy adjusted for 35mm. It was set at 2.25 by 3.25, so I could do my 6x7 stuff. I think that was it's usually how I leave this thing set up default. And then this is going to be tricky. I doubt we'll be able to see it on this video, but we'll give it a shot. Open this guy all the way up. Flip this guy over to focus, and then I had this set. I'm going to pull that filter out, and you can't see it. I'll turn the lights off. There we go. So this is the image I'm working on. A friend took the image, so I'm just doing the enlargement. And that's one of our mutual co-workers. You take this little guy, it's called a mini sight, and when you look through here, I tried to get a shot of it earlier, but I didn't have any luck. What you'll see, a friend of mine calls it a beach, like the sands of grain or something, beach of grains, I don't know. But basically you can see each individual grain when you look through here, reflected through this mirror, through this optic. And when each individual grain is in focus, you know that you're as in focus as you can get your setup. So use this guy to get your perfect focus. You can definitely get it close enough by eye. You don't need that, but I use it because it makes my life easier. And then I'm actually going to shimmy this around. I think I rotated it too much, so square it back up. Like that. Yeah, I like that. Dead center composition, but it's all right. I dig it. And it's not my shot either, so I guess I have a little more freedom in that. I don't know. Anyway, okay, so for the rest of this, I've got to turn the lights back on so you won't be able to see the image any longer. Okay, so we focused our image. We've set that up. I'm going to do this as a split filter just because I can. So That means we're taking a filter number 5. You can see that there. And that goes in my filter tray up top here. Above the condenser lens, which is what that was setting. It's like the image circle being projected by the condenser lens onto the negative. So it just gives you more light through the whole thing if you set it right. So now we've got this pinkish light coming out the bottom. And if I think I may have fudged anything, like bumped the board or anything like that, then there's a little slide here that I can chuck in, and that makes it super red. And I can actually put a piece of paper under this with the lights off with that red filter in, and it won't expose it, which is pretty great, pretty handy. It's called a safe light filter. So it's the same glass that's on this guy. It's just in a smaller piece you can put over your enlarger. So, and at this point, obviously we'd be all in dark. This is a little awkward. I have to hold it and use 2 hands for a second. So this piece of paper here, there's kind of a, man, you can't see this at all. Okay. It's kind of a slick side and a little bit rougher side. It's actually a different color. I didn't know that. But that's kind of cool. So anyway, the slightly smoother side is going to go up underneath your enlarging easel, or if you're just using a glass plate or something, you know, goes under there. And I should be able to just line this up so it'll go across there. And this is a shot piece. I pulled it out of this guy. When you buy your paper, it'll come in a box, usually like this, and it's got an outer lid that comes off. And then you've got this black plastic bag inside, which this should be enough to keep it light tight, but you should do this whole process in the dark when you're actually handling paper. This is empty now. So it'll be folded over on one end. You open it up. Inside here lives all your paper. Usually there'll be, you can usually feel when you're in the bag, you can feel a smooth side and a rougher side. So you know when you're pulling it out, which side is your side with the emulsion on it. The smoother side is going to be your emulsion side. So you pull that out and fold this guy back up. Stick it in there, and then close up your box. And that's hard to do one-handed. There, close up your box, put it back out of the way, and load your paper in your easel, and you're good to go. I've got a few cut strips in there that I use for doing test strips, which is what we're doing right now. Well, what we would be doing if the lights were off. So this guy gets loaded in there about like that. You want to pick an area. Let's see if I turn the lights off, if you can see this again. So I've laid the piece of paper out right here. You can see that's going over like his eyes and face, and then some stuff in the background we don't really care about, but you want to get as big of a slice of things you care about, you know, like the background we probably don't care about so much. So this one it actually might be better to do a vertical strip on. But I'm already set up for this and it worked for my other test strip. So I'm just going to do a horizontal again, but maybe on this one it'd be better to do a vertical. So you want to get as much useful information in your test strip as possible. And so usually that's going through the face, or, you know, in a landscape, going through some foreground and some background to make sure you're getting contrast in everything you want. All the important bits of the image. Lights are back on. So we've set that. Now it's a good idea to move this back over to timer, and that switches this light off and switches that light back on. So I can see what I'm doing, but this light is off. So at this point now I can pull this safe light filter back out, and this is again would be done with all the lights off. So you pull that out, and then I like to get my black piece of card out. And what we're going to do is cover this test strip up like that, and then every 5 seconds you do a little and I'm going to be doing this all in one go. I took a class where they had digital timers, and it was really easy to just start it and then it would automatically reset. With these analog timers, it doesn't work like that, so I'd have to like click 3 seconds, and 3 seconds isn't really, it's not very accurate on a machine like this. So with the digital one, anyway, you could set it for 3 seconds, and then when you're judging your exposures later, you only have to say, you know, you're only ever 1 second away from the next exposure. So if you like this one, but you think maybe this one is closer, which will, you know, then you pick in between the two, which is only ever a second away. So say this one is 3 seconds and this one is 6 second exposure, then you can, you know, bump it up to like 4 or 5. It gives you 2 numbers to pick from, rather than if I'm going to be doing 5 second exposures, so I'll have a 5 second and a 10 second. So if it's somewhere in between the two, I've got a larger chance of being wrong still. So anyway, it doesn't, I've had pretty good luck with it, but I'm not super exacting either. So 5 seconds in between each movement seems to work okay for me. So now we've got that covered up. This is on. We've got our filter in. Safe filters out. This is all closed up. We focused. I'm finding with my lens, it tends to be an f/16 exposure. I don't know if you can even see those numbers. There they are. So I'm going to start with it at f/16, and that looked like, I've already done one test strip actually, and it looks like it's about right. So now we have to turn this switch off, which kills both lights. This guy's off, and nothing's coming off out of here. And then we set our time. So I'm going to do a minute, which is this big hand. I just click that one stop to the right. And then as soon as I turn this switch back on, with this in time mode, it's going to turn on the enlarger. So then I'm ready to start cooking and do this test exposure. So we're going to click this on, and then that hand starts moving, and every 5 seconds, I just give it a little to the right. 4, 5. And again, like I say, I'm not super accurate at this, so I just get it close. So each one of these exposures is 5 seconds longer than the previous one, and that's going to give me a range to pick from when I'm doing this. And you can see, there's the image just very slightly on my hand. And this is all pretend because we're in light right now. This would all have to be done in the dark with the light off. But what the heck, we'll go through the whole thing. 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I've only got a little bit left. I hate it. I do this too much. So we'll do a little tiny one. It's okay. It's usually not the first 5 or the last 5 anyway that you're interested in. So then that clicks off, which turns off the enlarger and turns on your safe light. And now pick up your test strip and drop this guy down into the water. You take note of where your clock was. So we were about 25 minutes past, or 25 seconds past. And you just get this guy submerged. Well, and this stuff soups for a minute and a half, and this should turn, let's see, it's been completely exposed, so it should be totally black when we're done with it, which might, hopefully won't kill my developer for my subsequent test strips. I don't think it will. And so yeah, we're going to do a minute and a half, so we're waiting for the clock to go back around to the 11. I like to get this thing fully submerged face down, like that. Make sure the paper gets wetted out, and then flip it over, and then I can watch the image develop, and you just kind of rock it back and forth. Make sure you're getting fresh developer on the paper. All right, we're coming up, we're at about a minute. So we're gonna let this go another 30 seconds. And this is Ilford developer, paper developer, at just under 1 to 10. 1 to 9. Yeah, 1 part developer to 9 parts water. And there is 30 seconds, or a minute and a half, minute 30. Let that drip off a little bit, drop it in there. And this is just straight water. And we're doing this for a minute, about at straight up 12 o'clock when I put it in there. You don't really need to look at this one. I've covered up the toilet paper with some plastic bags so I don't splash it. It's a good idea if you're doing this in a restroom, as I am. So just let this guy go for a minute, and this is, you can also use a stop bath, an actual chemical stop bath, and that kills the developer in about 10 seconds rather than letting this soak through for a minute to get the developer out of it and get it stop developing the paper. Between 10 and 5 seconds before your time is up, it's a good idea to pick it up. And we'll let that dry. Again until the 12. Just flop that in there. Get it wet. Again, this is all in the dark. About 30 seconds into this fixer, I think you can turn the lights on, but I always just leave it off because it doesn't really matter. And then this sits in here for another minute. And this is a minute and a half in the developer because this is fiber-based paper. If you're using RC, what is that? Resin something, plastic paper. Oh, sorry, toilet's running. Anyway, if you're using resin paper, it's only a minute in the developer. For most papers, most developers, it winds up being a minute. But I bump it up to a minute and a half for fiber paper. And then that guy gets shooken off, and we stick it into our water bath. And it gets rinsed. So, and there you have it, lovely black image. This is one that I was talking about I had done. It was a little hot. I'm gonna cool it off. So this is the test strip that I'd actually done. So you can see, it's really hard to see on the video, but there's these very faint lines of definition where this is grading from very small amount of exposure up to fairly long exposure. And normally, so if you're doing this not split filter, you'd be looking for somewhere probably in here where you've got true blacks and then you've got full whites also. Obviously you wouldn't be doing this. Is a really high contrast filter because of the process I'm doing. So this wouldn't work out very well. But what we're looking for is actually just where the shadows start to come in, which is actually only like maybe 10. I'm going to do probably 15 seconds. Oops, can't see where my finger is. Probably going to do 15 seconds. So you can start to see definite detail in the shadows, whereas here it's still kind of a little washed out. Here there's nothing really. So I think I'm going to try 15 on the 5. And then I'll go through this whole process all over again with number 0 filter in the enlarger, and I'll look for where shadows start, or where highlights start to look normal, like just before, where I start to see detail in highlight areas. So I'll be looking for stuff in his face and maybe a little bit in the background, mostly his face in this one. So where there start to be little lines in his face for wrinkles and hairs and things like that. And then I'll do full test exposure of a full sheet with the 15 seconds for the high contrast, and then whatever I come up to with the low contrast. It'll probably be another 15 seconds. I'm finding that that's about where my exposures are lying when I'm doing split filter with a good density negative. So I'm gonna go do that and I'll be back. Here you can see this is the number 5, and this is a number 00 print. So we were looking at maybe 15-ish seconds on this one, and I think I fucked up this one. I think it's actually 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 seconds in there. So you can start to see that the highlights are really starting to get defined, and there's detail in them. Man, maybe even 25 seconds on that. I think we'll start with 20. We'll start with 22. I think. We'll go kind of in between those two right there. So we'll do 22 seconds for the low contrast and 15 seconds for the high contrast, or vice versa. We'll do 15 for the high contrast and then do 22 seconds for the low contrast to lay in those details over the high contrast, which kind of just creates like a cookie cutter cutout with all your shadow detail. And then this lays in your highlight detail on top of that, and they kind of add together. So that's why you choose such a low number there. Yeah. Now I'm having second thoughts. Oh well, we'll try it. $15 and $20. We'll do $15, $20. Okay. Ran another test strip here. You can see it's probably, I think we're a little on the light side, so I'm going to bump up my high contrast exposure by 5 seconds and really burn in the background details. I can see that like his teeth are still white and his eyes are still white, which is good. I don't want them to get grayed out. But I might go, I may go for more skin definition too. But first I'm going to try to stop, do another, I keep calling it a stop, another 5 seconds on this. See what that looks like when the contrast really darkens up in there and we start to see the blacks we want. Yeah, got a little better. I'm still not seeing quite what I want to see out of it. It's really close. I think I'm going to try doing something crazy. I think I'm going to increase the what do I want to do? I think I'm going to increase the low contrast time from 20 seconds to maybe 30 seconds. Give that a shot. See if I can get more detail in his face, more contrast in his face. I wonder if I should bump up from a 00 to a 0 also. Fuck it, I think I'm gonna try both those things. So I did one more test strip up here, and it wasn't quite, it's almost there. I didn't quite have the contrast I wanted. So I bumped up, this is a 0 filter, sorry, let's do it in the right order. Number 5 filter for 20 seconds. Number 0 filter for 30 seconds. So I bumped up from a 00 to a 0 and then increased the time on the low contrast side, but it still doesn't quite have the blacks in it that I wanted. So I took, and then for this exposure did the number 5 at 25 seconds instead of 20. Kept the low contrast the same, and I think it's right. I think we're keeping that one. I almost want to go a little further. Maybe reverse the two, do 30 on the high contrast and 20 on the low, but I think these things also darken up once they dry. I think this is going to be right. So now I'm going to do one with a number 2 filter, and we'll see what the difference is. So this guy is the split toned image, And then this one I did with a number 2 filter. And it may just be that I didn't expose it for as long, but I feel like in this image we're already starting to lose, like, some of the detail on his nose is starting to get darkened down, and teeth, and it's not, so maybe I bumped this up with a little bit higher contrast filter, but this one there's a lot more detail happening all over the image. Sometimes I've got to do this comparison to see if this is even worth it, and I think in this case it was. I'll put these on a flatbed scanner after they dry and then flash them up inside the video as we're going along. But I think that's it for today. Now we're, flip the screen around so I can see myself. Now I'm gonna untape everything and clean up and hang these to dry, and then come back in tomorrow, I guess, it's Monday, sometime during work, and I'll mat them. Bring my scanner to work, maybe scan them and then mat them and hand them off to Spencer for Mother's Day. It'll be nice. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.